Welcome to the 12-Step Recovery Evolution podcast. Visit recoveryevolution.co.uk for more episodes, helpful resources and links to our social media. Also visit the site for information on how you can attend a future Zoom session or workshop live. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Just before you listen to this video, I've listened back to it 2 or 3 times myself, and step 10 says continue to take personal inventory when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So I'd like to get ahead of the game and apologise before I've actually done anything, at least where you're concerned listening to this. And just wanted to apologise. I've kind of got a tendency to use some not good language. I don't mean swearing. I mean, when I sort of blanket people, like I say, all people and the fellowship, and it's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm actually would have liked to have said, if I could take it back, we thought we didn't want to edit it. That'd be a bit disingenuous. But to say that, I mean, in my experience, some of the people, or even majority of the people that I may have met under different circumstances, had fed back certain information to me that brought me to these conclusions, but they are just my conclusions or judgments. I'm sorry if I'm not completely right, but I'm trying to be completely honest about the program and carry this message. And I was trying to highlight a very important, but always has been controversial and always felt difficult to express, that I am one of the more religious members, or have been, of the fellowship, and I am one of the people that try not to be fanatical, but I truly do believe in methodically working through the steps as the best version of recovery that's possible from this program. And I know that's controversial, not everybody agrees, and that's fine. And just wanted to say sorry for my bad use of language. Please forgive me, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. Thank you. Morning, everyone. Good, everybody's here again today, and again, thanks, Fox, for doing it. And also, I think when Lindsay and Mike there were just sharing their gratitude, again, in the context of the 12-step, which I believe this is 12-step work, is that it reminded me of what I learned about 12-step work. And again, I've been doing a lot of 12-step work over my life, and people often give gratitude, and it's always nice to get, but it can sometimes get a little bit embarrassing, because you kind of know that I feel that out of, all of the people that I've helped, I've actually been helped more than anybody. And we get more into that as we go into the 12-step, because it's the fact that we carry this message to you, but it is actually for me. So I learned that we carry this message to you, but it is for me. And so there's never any debt involved in 12-step work or payment. And I think it's important to learn that. So we're gonna have a look at the 12-step. Now, again, I'm not talking on behalf of AA or anything like that. This is just my experience, my views over, my recovery and the years that I've spent doing this. And I've picked up a few little tips, and I'm not saying that I know everything by a long chalk, but, I've learned a couple of things. I've been pretty active in 12-step work in lots of different levels over the years. And I think I've learned a lot about it, and I think I've come to a conclusion. But also, I've noticed there's a lot of misconceptions about it as well. And I think some of them misconceptions are lethal. Some of them misconceptions can actually kill you. But they're also widely held misconceptions. Now, I do try not to script any of these talks. I try and speak just from my experience. And I realised when I'm on my bike ride this morning that my head was doing this talk, and it was really controversial, and I really wanted to do it. I really want to do it. I really want to get controversial, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to be controversial, because that's almost impossible not to be controversial in AA. But I'm not going to go too overboard with it again because of the guys that we're talking to on this website. And the reason that we're doing this is for you new guys, is just going to try and maybe remove some of the myths that I think are myths anyway, that you may be encouraged to believe as you wander into this 12-step program and these meetings full of many different minds with many different views, and some may suit you and some may not, and at the end of the day that's up to you. But I've always tried to be true to the big book, and that's been controversial in itself. I've often felt not welcome in a lot of meetings because I like to talk about the big book. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous. In the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, you can feel a bit uncomfortable talking about the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Bit strange, I know, but true. And also I felt a bit controversial talking about God. And people, I believe, that they try and stop you talking about the big book, and they try and stop you talking about God because they think it's going to frighten off the newcomers, where I believe you may be denying them the treatment if you don't do that. So I will risk frightening you off. I will try not to do that, and that's not the goal. The goal is to carry this message as contained in this book and as closely as I can without giving you my version of it, which can be very difficult. But without a shadow of a doubt, the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous has a very different version of the program than the program, because a lot of people, it seems to me, don't subscribe to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They don't like to follow what the program is in here. They think it's fanatical. They think it's just suggested. They seem to play it down a little bit. And to me, as far as I can tell, the fellowship in lots of areas has designed its own program. Now, that's pretty controversial, I know, but I'd like to validate what I just said with why I believe that. And because it says this, it says, having had a spiritual awakening. So it's having had a spiritual awakening. So that's like we've had a spiritual awakening, or as a result of these steps. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. Now that's the 12-step program. So there's 11 steps that go before the 12th one. And so if you haven't done them 11 steps before the 12th one, then I doubt you're doing the 12th one. Now, you may think you're doing the 12th one because you're pouring tea at a meeting, you're helping people and going to meetings, but you may be being helpful, you may be being a really nice person, you may be really kind, but if helping an alcoholic is a 12th step, then Turning Point and Change, Grow, Live and everybody in the Salvation Army that ever give a cup of tea to an alcoholic would be doing 12-step work, and they're obviously not. So just helping another alcoholic isn't 12-step work based on what it says here. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. So my argument is, and my belief, and what I'm putting out there in the internet land, is that if you're not doing the 12 steps as written in this book, what you're probably doing isn't 12-step work. And I think that's important to know, especially when you're new, because when you don't have a 12-step program, even though you go to meetings, you tend to try and fix people with drug and alcohol problems. You try to be a counsellor to them. Believe me, I spent years doing that. You try and be a counsellor or a marriage guidance therapist or an accountant. But you spend a lot of time trying to fix people and their problems, which I'm not really qualified to do, and nor are most other people. So when we choose a 12-step sponsor, I would recommend probably choose somebody that has gone through the steps at least once, that their job is to help you understand the steps, because these steps are the recommended treatment of recovery from this program. And so there's a lot of misconception been put on that over the years, as far as I can tell. That, and again, I'm pretty sure if I was saying this in a mainstream argument and a mainstream meeting, most of them, and I was the first speaker, I'd probably be expecting an hour of why I'm wrong. And it's not up to me and who do I think I am. But again, I hope you realise that I'm sort of just reading what's written in this book. And I do try and do that. I've been trying to do that ever since the beginning of my recovery, when I realised that I try and help people understand this program. And that's what I've been doing every day when we come on here and sit and talk. I'm trying to carry this message, not trying to get you to follow Lester. I'm not trying to let you know how wonderful and brilliant and super spiritual I am. I'm trying to help you understand that in this book is a wonderful program, and it can be yours if you want it. And if you learn it and you practice it, then having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, then you can carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all your affairs. So one thing I've discovered over the years, and it's a bit of a bummer, that there's lots of kind of different spiritual awakenings. Believe it or not, you can actually have a spiritual awakening with not following this program. Lots of people have spiritual awakenings in the program, but it's not a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And the reason I say that is because when you talk to them and they've not done the steps. And so it can't be as a result of the steps, but they have had a spiritual awakening. Now, I think the difference in that is that in their spirit, they may have the same spiritual awakening as that I've had, but in their mind, there's usually something that's missing, in the sense of, again, I don't mean that in a derogatory term, I mean it in the sense of what's missing is this 12-step process. So you can have a spiritual awakening, but not the 12-step process. And I do think there's a massive difference. Because what I believe the result of this program is, I think when you come in, now remember, this is saying that if this is saying what's going to solve your problem is you need this spiritual awakening. You need to start embarking on this spiritual journey. You need this reunion with your spirit. So again, I can conclude that if that's what it's saying is the solution, then I've got to realise that the problem is the lack of that in my life. The fact that I've not got this spiritual awakening, that I'm not aware of this spirit, that I'm not developing this conscious contact with God as I understand him, the fact that I'm not cleaning out these unwholesome thoughts and I'm not experiencing the higher mind, that it leaves me in this place where it says then the root of that problem is self, is selfishness, self-centered, self-seeking. And you can probably agree, and if you don't, I'm sure your parents and spouses will, that an alcoholic and addict, especially when they're drinking, they're incredibly selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, self-pitying people. And they're the same in recovery as well, when they haven't got a program. They may go around thinking, well, at least they don't drink or take drugs, but they're probably still not the most pleasurable people to be in your experience. That's been my experience. So it's saying that the self, this selfishness, is the root of the problem. So selfish people certainly don't help other people. They're not usually concerned about other people, and they don't have the level of consciousness that makes them even consider other people or be thoughtful of other people. And again, that's the spiritual dis-ease in itself, because it's then going to make me a very lonely, very separate, isolated individual which is not what a human being wants to be at all. And so you couldn't be more unspiritual being an alcoholic and an addict, because you're certainly not helping anybody. And so, and even if you are, it's probably coming out of self. And so it's saying, as we go through these steps, it helps us to identify self, and then it helps us to start to become free from self. And as we work through these steps, at some point, you know, like that bit we read about spiritual awakening, sometimes it happens very quickly for people, but with most people, it's like an educational variety. It's a little clawing away. It's just taking little bits here, little bits there. And then eventually we reach this point of this spirit ritual awakening, and we feel this freedom from self. Now that's a very different state than having a spiritual awakening where you've still got too much self, and having a spiritual awakening where you've become free from self. Two different states. Now, when we start reading in the 12th step, where it starts, we're going into working with others, which is the bit of the book that is talking about the 12th step, after we've finished the, you know, the On Awakening to step 11 part of the book, which we looked at. It goes into the step 12. It says practical experience. This is on chapter 7, page 89. It says practical experience shows us that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. So actually, when I was first around, and I hadn't actually done the program, but I was doing it, I started to, my sponsor sort of said, look, I've got to go on a 12-step call. Do you want to come with me? And so he took me to meet this person who was struggling, and we sat and talked to them and offered them, you know, some support and the fellowship and meetings and picking them up. And we started to pick him up together, this new guy, and take him to meetings and take him for coffee and chat with him and tell him, you know, talk about our past, just to get some, recognition with him. And then we started to talk about the program and how, you know, what it used to be like, and then what happened that we come in to the 12-step program and the meetings, and we started to work the program and go to meetings, and then what happened, what become our life after that. And so he started to show me the process of teaching people the program when you're actually supporting them and taking them to meetings, but the goal was to teach him the program. And so it says, and it made me feel really good about myself. It made me feel really good. It really helped me get out of self. And it says it here. It says it works when other activities fail. This 12th suggestion, carry this message. Again, it's carry this message, not any old message, but carry this message to other alcoholics. And so I realised that I say it like this, I used to help people because it helped me get out of self. And I used to get relief from that. That I found that it was sort of funny. I noticed that then I joined the prison meeting, and I felt when I went in the prison, I felt a lot better than I did in the prison than I did when I was out in my normal life. And I used to even tell them in the prison, I'd say, I come here for, you lot all want to get out, but I can't wait to get in here every week. I said, I come here for a bit of release from myself, because I never had a program. I'd left Canada, I'd come back to England, and I'd never really finished working the program. And so I was helping a lot of people, because it made, I realised that when I was down the night shelter, I felt better. When I was on the phone to somebody, I felt better. When I was in a meeting, I felt better. And I felt when I was doing this 12-step work, I actually felt better. And that went on for like 5 years. And this is where I was saying it can be a bit disastrous for some people, and maybe even terminal. That I thought that I was going to meetings, I was helping people, and I seemed to be this incredible example of the 12-step program. I was helping everybody, but not doing the steps, but getting to meetings. And, you know, trying to help sort all their problems out. And, you know, started to be a bit of a Saint Lester from Watford. And, you know, people who would say, oh, if you need any help, send them around Leicester's house. And I loved that again, because, you know, it really gave me some esteem that made me feel better about myself. And again, I think a lot of the reason I was doing it was for that. I wanted you to realise how good I was and what a nice person I was, and how much I helped people, and how self-sacrificing I was. But after 5 years of that, I just reached this place where my stomach just exploded. And I felt just as desperate in that 5th year as I did in that day that I come into the fellowship. And I thought, I can't carry on like this. I don't want to drink or use drugs anymore, but I don't want to live. I can't live like this. And a couple of things happened in my life. I started a very different relationship with this idea of God, but I also joined this God Squad big book study in the next town, where they had the big book and they'd go through it like 3 lines at a time. And everyone said they were God's squad. And even the people on the telephone service used to tell people, don't go to that Tuesday night meeting in Boreham Wood. And I'd sit in this meeting. I sat in that meeting for maybe 3 or 4 years. And I'd watch people coming through the door that were like, been in the fellowship, and they're all broken up and all had enough, just like I did. And again, they got desperate enough to turn up to this meeting. But we started to work through the steps. They were people that actually worked the steps. And my sponsor kind of said, he said, look, he said, you got physical sobriety because you're not drinking anymore. He said, but you got no emotional, mental sobriety because you're not working the steps. He said, so you're still full of self. He said, so let's get some of that out of you. Let's get that cast out. And so he started to work me through the steps. And it was a different experience than I had before, because he was like, if you get a resentment and you call me and I tell you make amends, you do it that day. The day we tell you, go and make that amends. And of course, that line scared the life out of me. But I started to do the steps, and I still carried on helping a lot of people, but something started to change in me. And what I realised is I started to grow spiritually. See, now I helped just the same amount of people before I did the steps, but I wasn't growing spiritually. In actual fact, I was getting sicker and sicker. But when I did the steps, and I still helped the same amount of people, I started to grow spiritually. There was a massive, massive difference. And I've never said this in a public place before, but I really, really want you guys to try and understand what I'm saying, because I think this was a real turning point in my life. And I think this is a turning point that most people in recovery never get to discover. But I really want you to discover it. That there's this turning point. That, see, I used to help people to get out of self, and it worked. It says it's a blissful state. It's called two-stepping. We don't drink and we help other people. And it does kind of get you out of self, but it doesn't deal with the self problem. It just gives you some relief. And so you kind of do it because you're trying to relieve you of yourself. It's still coming from a selfish place. It's like a strange program that you may have in it, that if you need to go down the hospital to see people in wheelchairs to feel grateful, I mean, it works, but it don't seem right, does it? It doesn't seem right to find somebody worse off than me just so I can feel better about myself. Now, again, it works, and we all do it. I'm really grateful, you know, of what I got. It works. But see, when I worked the program and that self started to go away from me, then I noticed this spiritual experience started happening in my life, and I started to grow spiritually. I started to understand things that I couldn't understand before. I started to see things that I never see before. I started to have a new experience that I'd never had before. I started to get these new freedoms that I'd never known were there before. And see, and when it comes to helping people, I say this, I used to help people to get out of self. But when I'd done the steps, now I help people because I'm out of self. And there's a massive difference, because in the first one, you don't grow spiritually. You just get relief, but you don't grow. See, it says in page 14 of the big book, in Bill's story, it says, my friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Now, again, if you haven't got these principles or don't understand them, which again, I think we've demonstrated over the last period of time that not many people do, even if you've been to a lot of meetings, that you may not understand these principles. So how can you possibly demonstrate them in your life, never mind all your affairs? And look, we're going to do a lot more work on these principles, so everybody's clear on them and everybody knows how to practice them in their life, because again, we want you to have that experience. It says, particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. He said, faith without works was dead. He said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. Now, this is the real key here. It says, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect, to grasp, and enlarge, develop his spiritual life, because this isn't just about not drinking and not taking drugs. That's just that's what we did because we didn't have a spiritual life. It's what we did because we didn't have a spiritual life. It's so abhorrent, this world, to me, without a spiritual life. I can't stand it. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to avoid not living without the spirit. I need to live this spiritual life. For 25 years. This hasn't been about not drinking and not taking drugs. This is about developing my spiritual life. I believe this is a spiritual program. I don't believe this is a not drinking and not drug taking program. In actual fact, just using it for that is like, it's like taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut. We've just reduced the importance of this down to its bare minimal use. Stop drinking and taking drugs it's just the beginning. If it's barely about a beginning, it says. It says this spiritual perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice of others. He could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. And with us, it is just like that. So there's this big difference between doing step work or helping people without doing the steps. When you've done the steps, it's a totally different experience, and you start to grow and you start to develop. And it's impossible to do that without helping other people. If you're too selfish to help other people because you haven't done the steps, you're never going to change from that point. The result's going to be nil. You're going to stay in that point. You're going to keep going around, and it's all going to be about you. And you can hear that when you're around people in recovery. They just want to talk about their problems all the time. Now, again, I'm not saying that to the new people. That's fine, and that's what you should be doing. But to the people that are in a position of sponsorship, you should be helping them people resolve them problems by teaching them this program, not giving them therapy. Therapy's great, but therapists should be doing it. So it says, and then so this chapter 7, it gives us instructions. And again, I've tried to follow them to the best of my ability. And, you get better at it. We're practicing a program. Nobody's perfect. We're all just doing the best we can to grow, but some of us don't know what we should be doing, so we're not developing. And so it's important that you know what you should be doing so that then you can have the chance to develop, or you're going to be stuck in the darkness, and so many in the fellowship are. I meet them all the time. I've met them over the last 30 years. A massive portion of them are lost in this fellowship program. To all intents and purposes, on the surface, they look like they're kind of doing all right. The other people around them are confirming that they're doing all right because they're all in the same place as well. And then when somebody that's done the steps comes in, they kind of can turn on you. They drive you out because it's not what the program they want to hear. They don't want to hear about all of that. So he's saying that we carry this message to other alcoholics. Because I don't want to mess with your life. I don't want to screw with your life and try and get you to follow me around or use you to satisfy my insecurities or my need for praise or my need for, you know, to be loved and to be liked. I don't want to use you for that. I want to make sure that you get this program. I want to make sure that you get to enjoy and be given all the things that I've been given from it. And I don't want to screw with your lives. Whether you want to hear it or not, I'm going to try and give this program. And again, I try not to do it in a fanatical way, because I know that can be hard work when people have been a bit too fanatical. I've been like that in my past, but I learned that's not a good way. That the only people that are excited about that message are other fanatical people, but it kind of starts lacking a bit of love. And you know, I think it's important to have love and compassion and understanding, but also a firm conviction. And I'm not going to be pulled off of this path. I'm not going to let anybody pull me off this path. Not even the other 7 million people on earth. If they're all going that way and it's not on this path, then I'm going on my own. And anyone who wants to go this way is welcome to come, but I'm not going that way. I've not been a great joiner. It's not that I don't want to join. It's just I don't want to go down that path because I've discovered this is the road less travelled. You know, there's not many people really go down this path, but when the ones that have, I'm kind of more attracted to them. They seem to be the fellowship that I crave. So if you want to go down that other path and you're happy down that other path, I'm really happy for you. Honestly, I am. I'm not even going to argue with you. I don't even bother arguing anymore. It's just saying, look, if you want this and you want to do this, then I'm more than happy to show you. It excites me. There's nothing I love more, because when I get to carry this message to you, it helps me to grow. You know, look, I've grown probably more than anybody doing this over the last 3 weeks. You know, every time I share this message, I learn something new today. I mean, as I'm talking to you, I'm listening to myself and I'm learning. Every time I read this book, I'm learning. It's that fantastic. It's just that fantastic. And it's something to be that I'm excited about. And I try and contain it because I don't want to scare anybody off. And I don't want you to, you know, because I know that you haven't had enough chance to understand what's meant when the word God said. Like I say, when we say apple, they say green apple, they say red apple. I'm talking about computers. I don't want to scare you off with the word God. But there's nothing wrong with God. There's something wrong with your understanding. So we don't want to scare anybody off. We want you to have this more than anything, because it says here, look, it says, carrying this message to other alcoholics, you can help when no one else can. And again, that's been the exact experience of my life. You know, most people want to try everything else before they try this. Even a lot of people in the program phone me 10, 15, 20 years later. They didn't even want to try it. You know, like when people say, well, it ain't going to work for everybody. It's like, everybody's not done it. Most people in the fellowship have not done it. And they've gone off doing all kinds of other stuff. And then 10 years later, 5 years later, they phone and say, look, man, I ain't got anything to tell you, except you need to do the program. And again, without fail, when they start doing the program, all of their lives improve. It's not my opinion. That's my experience. And I can't tell you anything different. You've been around, all of you, long enough to know that the people that ain't making it ain't doing the program. I don't want to beat them up and put them down, but it's just, I want to highlight the fact this program actually works wonderful for those that do it. I know that's not always easy for everybody, but it still doesn't change the fact and the principle that this is the treatment for this kind of problem, and that what we're all craving is union with spirit. So it says you can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember that they are very ill. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is the experience you must not miss. Now that's one of the musts in the big book that I love. Nothing gives me more pleasure than watching people recover and get this message. Nothing. I just can't. It just nothing does. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that kind of equal it now, if I'm honest. I was talking to somebody yesterday about, when you get this heightened experience of spirit, that how much you can actually see in this world that you couldn't see before, and how much more pleasurable it becomes. Don't get me wrong, the pain becomes a lot deeper as well. But it says life, we know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. Perhaps you are not acquainted, with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily see some by asking a few, you can easily find some by asking a few doctors. Now remember, this is when you've done the 12 steps, not one of them, not two of them, not 5 of them, but 12 of them. This is the 12th step. This is what you're going to carry, the 12-step message about doing the 12 steps. And again, look at the films, read the early stories. It's what it's telling you. That we've done these 12 steps and it worked for us. And then we went and found the third one. Well, Bill went and found the second one. Then they went and found the third one. And they said, look, we've been doing this stuff, this spiritual stuff. And if you do it, we're pretty sure it can resolve your problem. We're going to show you how to do it. It says you can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. Now, today there's it's probably a lot easier to find places to help people in Turning Point and the CRIs and stuff like that. But even when I started, there wasn't any of that around, to tell the truth. So we could actually go to the doctors and to the prisons and the ministers and the priests and the people in churches. They tend to look after a lot of people with addiction problems, but we know a lot of them don't even want help. And it says they will be only too glad to assist. It says don't start out the evangelist or a reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists, and this was in 1937 or whatever, but that's still the same today when it comes to the 12-step program. It says, it's got a lot better, but it ain't completely better. It said you will be handicapped if you arouse it. It seems a bit extreme, but I think it just means it'll make it harder for you if you're going with all guns blazing. It says ministers and doctors are competent and you can learn a lot from them if you wish. The truth is a lot of doctors and ministers, they are frontline addiction treatment. Our minister Neil from the London Road Baptist Church, we do a lot of work with him, and he expressed that over the years he's seen a lot of people with addiction and a lot of I'm getting a bit tired today, so I lose the track of words. A lot of projects that work with addiction, but he said that he sees something different about our project, and I think that's because we work the steps. He said you could see something different in their minds, in the spirit, in the way they were lifted up. And even other people have told us over the years, it's not bragging, this is again his experience, where they've said, look, people that have come back from your treatment centre, they're very different. And they said, no, not different from when they went, different from other treatment centres. He said there's something different in the way they think. They seem more empowered. They seem to want to get on more. And I believe that's because we teach the 12 steps. I know that's because we teach the 12 steps, and they're starting to get the power of the Spirit in them. It says, but it happens that because of your own experience, you can be uniquely useful to help other alcoholics. Now, again, just to confirm that when we used to go in the prison, we used to speak to anywhere from sort of 20 to 50 prisoners every Monday morning in the induction meeting. And they were talking about cutting back and cancelling the induction meeting. And we used to go to all the meetings with the governors and the other agencies and stuff like that, and the pastoral team. And this is what they said, again, not bigging up, just telling the truth and just showing the experience. That what they said was, we think that even if we didn't cancel this meeting, just so these 12-step people can come in. They said, because one thing we've observed over the years is that when these 12-step people talk to these prisoners, they get almost complete attention from the prisoners. And they said the whole room atmosphere changes. He said, and nowhere else do we see that we get that kind of attention from this group of people. And that's because most of them are craving what we have. So never underestimate the power. It is literally unequaled. What you guys, with your past and with the program, when you go and talk to somebody on a proper 12-step, it's literally unequaled what message you can carry to them people. Their minds will open up to you, where they're going to stay closed to everybody else. And it's profound. I mean, sometimes it's just profound. It says to be helpful is our only aim. Now, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to give you an extra 5 minutes because it's quite a big subject. And tomorrow I'm not going to be here, but Fox has kindly agreed to carry on working through and sharing some of his experience. So I think we're going to stick with the 12-step for a little while. And because again, we can pick that apart, boil it down, and a lot of the other steps are contained in it. So really, the 12-step is the beginning. It's not the cherry on the cake. It's like the beginning of spiritual development. Before that, you're dealing with addiction, and that you're trying to give people the tools to be able to develop their spiritual life. And that's what this really is all about, as far as I can tell. This is about developing yours, giving you the tools, giving me the tools to develop my spiritual life and get that conscious contact with God as I've understood him. And again, it sounds simple, but it's so hidden. It's even hidden in the meetings. I can't see it in a lot of meetings when I go to them. That this is the message. That this is the message, and it's a wonderful message. And again, I love it when people get it.